And he still
Whoa.
doesn't have a webcam.
Yep. 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 Yep.
Ah, that's great. That's apropos for what we're talking about tonight because of end times. It's the end of your webcam career.
Sometime in the next month. Sometime.
But that's what happens when you have mischievous felines who like to chew upon your tasty
Everything.
cables. Everything. My goodness. Everybody, welcome to a fantastic another episode of this Uncanny Earth. Episode 362. We're 362 episodes into this crazy whatever. I don't know. Anyways, gentlemen, how are you doing this evening?
Fun.
Making it, getting through.
Okay. Well, excellent. Hey, somebody did catch a show. It's been a long
Yep.
time since we've seen you, my friend. I hope you're doing well.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. So, gentlemen, tonight we're talking about some end times prophecies. What do you guys know about end time prophecies? Like, what are your like earliest memories of an end time prophecy? What were they? Like, what was the thing for you guys?
Spider, you
Spider, go
want to go
ahead.
first?
Yeah, I can't signal to Shay, hey, I want to say something, guys. Can't raise my hand. Oh.
Just start shouting.
Um, um, well, when I was a lot younger, of course, my family were churchgoers. And while we didn't go to any sort of like the big fire and brimstone kind of churches, we were familiar with the story of Revelations and how things were going to go down at the very end. And while I personally have kind of moved on from that particular telling, that was probably one of the earliest um points where somebody specifically in authority would said, hey, yeah, it's all going to be over, and it's going to be, this is the reason why, and this is what's going to happen, as opposed to, as I grew up a little bit, we had various television shows and movies where there'd be somebody standing on a corner with a sign saying the end is near, and that kind of stuff. And
True.
then, of course, late 90s, early 2000s, you had all the disaster movies start rolling
Oh
out.
yeah.
You had the
Oh
tidal
yeah.
waves and the
Oh yeah.
volcanoes and the
The ice.
tornadoes
Don't forget about
and
the ice.
everything.
The
Yep.
ice. The
Yep.
ice.
Nice. And
We're
so
gonna
that always,
get
that kind of kicked in with the whole like, the world is going to end
But
whether you like it or not.
remember that depressing book that was also a movie
Hmm.
that was like in
Hmm.
the 50s on the beach. Oh my gosh, bro. It's
Yes.
a wrap. It's a wrap.
That's
And
the
you
saddest
that
book of
whole
all time because
it's oh, it's
it ends
Firewatch.
badly for everybody, like at the
It
end. But it ends like quietly badly, not even like, oh, there's a bunch of murder and stuff. No, it's just, oh yeah, we're all gonna
mhm.
pass. Let's just sit down and wait for it. It's
in our
it's
in our
so
in our
depressing.
submarine.
Yeah, I remember having a dream about that not like a few years back, and it just came up in my Facebook memories about having that dream about sitting there with Queens of the Stone Age music playing in the background.
And I
It's,
read that book because you let me borrow it.
yep.
I was like, bro, why would you do this?
It was right after Firewatch, wasn't it?
No,
Because
Firewatch was bad.
Firewatch was a sad game and this was a sad book. They're like the two saddest
Yeah,
bits of
right.
entertainment.
Oh yeah, you could listen if you want yourself a good depression, play back to back. Because you could
Mhm.
beat Firewatch and still watch that movie in a day. You could
Mhm.
do it. Yeah. Be depressed all day. I don't know. Steven, how about yourself? What are your earliest memories of end times?
So, like Spider said, we all remember the biblical apocalypse. And other than that, though, my earliest memory is of course, the 2012 because I graduated in
Yeah.
2012. So that
Yeah,
was
that's
like,
22. I remember
well, no,
2012.
2013. My bad, 2013, because we were making jokes about it, and we were like, "Oh no, the world's gonna end before we graduate." It was a whole thing at the time. And that goes into Project Looking Glass, and there's a whole thing around that one.
Okay. So for me, of course, because I grew up in the church as well. So yeah, like the adults will talk about it like it's the scariest thing in the world. And then as I got older, I realized there's a lot of symbolism in that, and there's a lot of
There
things
you
that
go.
lie underneath. You can't really look at it in certain terms, but that's neither here nor there. Like I said, I'm not going to get into a diatribe about it. However, Um, to kick us off here, what I do find to be interesting is so I was, you know, with biblical stuff, I like to read as much as I can and then get some basic cliff notes from the other books. And so I was just going through like Jeremiah, and I was going through Joel, and I was going through Daniel, and I was going through a couple of those prophetic books, Isaiah. And a lot of what they're saying is, I want to put it in a way that makes sense. So a lot of it, while it's more foreshadowing than it is in the future. Because I think what a lot of people don't look at when you read the Bible, because you have to do this when you read the Bible, you have to understand that the times they were in. Because if you don't understand the times that they're in, that rotate around, God, you're not going to understand the aspects. And so the aspects, um, to me, it just shows you foreshadowing of what's going to happen because of events that have already happened. I don't think it's so much as future prophecy, which is basically more so proto prophecy than it is actual. And then when you get into Daniel 7:12, it becomes more symbolic type of prophecy where you have like Rome having a ruler. The ruler dies, four try to vie for his spot. So now there's four little kings because there's not a big one yet, and then one rises in the middle, and that's a whole nother king. And then they equate a lot of this to the end times. And then Revelations takes that step further. And so growing up in the church, I'd always try to read Revelations, just thought, let me see what this is about. And it's difficult to read until you get older, in my opinion, because you have to see the world for what it is. So a lot of it doesn't make sense when you're young. But when you see how man reacts, how man acts, the way he moves, the way he talks, the way he breathes, everything starts falling into place of how to be what I believe to be a better person, but that's neither here nor there. Um, so for me, that was my induction into apocalyptic literature. Now, obviously, later on, I've read all kinds of apocalyptic literature, things about the Anunnaki coming back from Nibiru to see us in the Terror Dome or whatever. I don't know. One man enter, one man leave, or two men enter, one man leave. Whatever. Um, all the way up to different religious apocalypses and what will happen. A lot of them mirror kind of each other in certain ways. You always have some um, demonic entity that's rising out of somewhere to come eat some people. You always have some form of tyrant that will usher in an apocalypse. So, and a lot of that was played up in the church that I was in because they would bring up the Antichrist.
Yeah.
The number of the beast. 666, and there's symbolism there, and it doesn't mean what other people think it means. It really doesn't mean what normal people think it means. And when you start understanding it a little bit better, and you start understanding God a little better, once again, this is not neither here nor there. I'm just saying for myself. Um, you're able to kind of unlock different mysteries, and it progresses your brain. And so for me, that was my earliest. But then you would have like, I remember seeing like drawings of what these beasts looked like in my grandfather's closet. It was crazy because they all went to church. So they would keep the literature. And my grandfather had, I'll never forget it. I was looking, I was like, oh, okay.
Mhm.
So because somebody just sat there and said, this is what this is and this is how it is. So,
Yeah.
and, they made a pretty multi-million-dollar movie series called Left Behind. I've read most of the books for
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I've heard
Yeah.
those.
I've read them all except the last one. The last one I was just kind of done. It just felt so forced at that point, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
As you get older, you realize some things just don't make sense. So it was just like, oh, I'm cool. So that's my earliest in terms of apocalyptic aspects, and then growing that into, like I said, the Anunnaki coming back, which is a very interesting concept that I don't know if Spider's looking to cover tonight. I know we're going to be talking about CERN and cover other things, which is a very interesting. I'm interested in seeing how you guys spin this. But I always thought that was an interesting one because while I don't believe it, there is talk of another planet that was once in the solar system, which I find to be a very fascinating conversation to have.
Yeah.
I don't think just because I believe what I believe doesn't mean things happen in that realm. Just because God is there, and in my opinion, doesn't mean that um, these universal disasters can't happen. You know what I mean? I don't. So in my opinion, there was probably something that was rotating around, and that could have caused some things, and that could have also caused different aspects of biblical text to have happened upon that shift. So, anyways, Spider, what do you have? What is your game tonight, good sir?
Well, I volunteered to talk about that CERN incident and where it actually came from.
He said
So,
that CERN incident. I about had it with that CERN boy.
so that's where we're coming in. For anyone who does not know, let me make sure that I get the name correctly for what
No,
CERN.
no. You should have sent that. You should have sent that over to me first. Mm-mm, mm-mm,
Um,
mm-mm.
what's interesting, it is the European Organization for Nuclear Research. I'm not sure why it's CERN if it's
Put,
using that, but it must be in another language and translated into
just say it.
the
Just
title.
say it.
It doesn't have it here. Doesn't have it here.
Oh, you
So,
got out of that one. We were gonna put you on the spot. You got out of that one.
but it is it's the home of the Large Hadron Collider, the LHC, which I find really interesting. I've always been a big
Yeah.
fan
It is
of the
interesting.
collider. Um, I like the mission that they're trying to accomplish, which is they're trying to cause various reactions deep in a part of the planet where it's not directly affected by certain particles. And you have to block out interference and you have to block out a bunch of things. So they throw atoms together, they measure the energy that comes off in very simple terms, of course.
I apologize. Like the way he so the way he described it. So I don't know what I'm talking about. The dumpster and the washing machine. You know what I'm talking about, right? So when you said that, that is that's exactly how I pictured how all that happens in the Hadron Collider.
It might, but it's probably a little bit less romantic than that. So, but I mean, if you just have to ask, they'll probably tell you. But it's very important for matter, antimatter, and quote unquote the origins of the universe. That's what it's trying to
Right.
study. Now,
Right.
that being said, there is a sizable number of people who believe that these experiments are bad. Some of them are for very legitimate reasons, because if you mess around with very dense molecules and you combine things in ways that you're still experimenting with and still theoretical, that you don't really know what's going to happen, then it's possible you could create dangerous particles or antiparticles, or
Like a
in a
black
worst
hole.
case, yeah, in a worst
Sorry.
case scenario, you could create a miniature black hole. And now, I read a long ways back, just to preface this again, because there's a lot of bits and pieces to this. So we're going to have to kind of go on some tangents
I
to
love
connect all this
tangents.
together.
I
Here
got
we
Um,
go. I knew it.
throughout history of this kind of science, apparently the human race has already once or twice created miniature black holes, but the black holes were contained in certain environments. They had nothing to feed on, they had nothing to build off of, and they collapsed in on themselves because they weren't self sustaining, which is what all the big black holes in the galaxy are right now. They're self sustaining, they have enough energy coming in that they can go on forever until that energy runs out. So, and it doesn't take much, it takes just a trickle of energy feeding into a black hole for it to start becoming self-sustaining, which is the fear of a lot of people. Now, on the other part of that, there are people who believe that not only would it scientifically be bad, but it would be bad metaphysically because you could tear a hole in fabrics of reality and, quote, open a portal to hell, is what a lot of people believe. Now,
Now, was that the UAC that brought that out or no?
it's a very interesting comparison because that's the kind
I
of stuff
thought
that
so
they were
too.
doing in the popular Doom franchise. For
Oh,
anyone
you
who
shouldn't have told
hasn't
nobody. You
read.
shouldn't have told anybody. Let them figure
Well,
it
I'm
out.
proud of that. I'm proud of that. Um,
Oh my gosh, what's the UAC?
so all of that being known, let's talk about the belief in the theory. Um, Periodically, the collider has to be shut down, not just for maintenance, but so that they can accurately collect the data and they can, check the particles, all that kind of stuff. If you just run it continuously, you're not going to be able to see everything. It's just going to block out what you're trying to find. So you have to shut it down periodically, check the data, make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do. Okay. And around 2012, it was due for another shutdown. Now, a lot of people believe that during that shutdown, it actually caused a destabilization of our universe. And the result was one of multiple things. Either everything ended and we were shunted into, as Stephen likes to talk about, a giant simulation to protect humanity for whatever reason.
And I think that's where the Mandela effect comes from.
Mandela effect is a big part of it. I'm not going to get into that too much
Yep.
because we've talked about that before, but that is a legitimate part of the theory. Another theory is that we were pushed into a parallel universe because our universe was on the verge of destruction. And so it branched off to protect the timeline because that's supposedly what quantum theory predicts, that if one timeline ends, it adds another one to continue on in a different direction.
I love quantum immortality.
And another theory is that the world ended in such a way that it's still ending right now, and we just haven't noticed.
Because
That
time isn't
everything
real.
has been going downhill at such a rate that eventually we'll catch on. Hey, it's too far gone. We can't go back. And the reason why was because of the collider. Now, this was described initially by a Twitter user named Nick Hinton in 2019. He started a thread entitled A Conspiracy Thread. Did the world end in 2012? And of course, this got a lot of attention. In the thread, he explained that that was the year that the European Organization for Nuclear Research, CERN, discovered the Higgs boson particle, which I remember because
I
I was
remember this.
excited for it too. I remember the search for it. There was a lot of sci-fi being written at the time about the possibility of that. So it was pretty exciting to me. But that because of their discovery, it caused what was described by Stephen Hawking as a catastrophic vacuum decay, which is basically that everything that we know of, all life, all everything, got pulled into a black hole. And the only reason we're still around to discuss it is
Time
because we are all
dilation.
frozen in an instant of time that hasn't ended yet. But at some point, it will
Very soon.
for us, abruptly without any sort of knowledge. Um, Now, Hinton wrote that, quote, maybe CERN accidentally created a black hole that sucked us in without us even noticing, and we've just been living in it. Now, to kind of throw against that, if that did happen, from our current understanding, we probably would have noticed for all of about 3 seconds, and then we'd all be dead because everything would have been crushed, everything destroyed, scientifically, as far as we're aware right now.
Let me also say that I don't buy into it because historical patterns are always they're cyclical. A
Mhm.
Yes.
historical pattern is always cyclical because you put mankind in the presence that he's in, he's always going to do things on a cyclical nature.
Mhm.
Because here's the issue: we are not immortal. We're not Hulk Hogan, right? But we're not immortal in terms of our body rots and decays. Now, obviously, they're
Our
coming out with
spirit lives.
technology and things like that, that can keep the body doing what it's doing. So you edge yourself into a future. But what I'm saying is, for a long time, we have been very mortal. So we live our lives based on this time frame that we have that we cannot escape from currently. I say currently, obviously, but I'm talking about our ancestors, and they have that repetitive pattern. Now, I do believe that there have been ELE events. I won't take that away from um, from what we're talking about tonight. But I don't believe we've ever jumped or shifted into another universe because of cyclical patterns of human beings and how human beings operate. Is it an interesting conversation? I like this conversation because I like the possibility and I like to think about it. But to also, because I also want to throw against it a little bit as well. I think that we should. For me, it's that. It's just people are people. You know what I mean? And I get what we're saying that they've changed up a bit, but I get it though. I get it. But if we're like you said, if we're in a black hole, we'd pretty much be done because matter would destroy us, or because we're made of matter. Whatever. Sorry.
Well, we're gonna go back and forth on it. I'm gonna throw in the pros and the cons and the fors and against we're doing it, and then we're gonna open up the floor afterwards so that everybody can weigh in before we move on. The other part of this is that according to the thread is that if we were pulled into a black hole, there would be a good chance of catastrophic earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions as Earth's tidal heating and everything got stretched out before we split into countless atoms. Now, on the one hand, you could say, because of our understanding of time, we could say, well, that's all happening right now. We got the wildfires, we got all these earthquakes, we got all these things going on right now, and we're in the middle of that now. Well, on the other hand, again, current science says all of that would have been experienced in an instant, regardless of our understanding of time. So there's two ways you can look at it, whether you believe it or whether you don't. The last final part of this, well, actually, there's two more parts. He had two more theories. The biggest thing was that he says ever since 2012, nothing has felt right. Now that's a sentiment I've heard a lot.
Yeah, I've heard
And I wanted to weigh in on that myself. His reason for that was that disasters have increased in timing. Things seem to be accelerating in how bad things happen, and it seems like time is going faster because of all the just horrible things that are going on. One of the things that happened around that time, I believe that was when the tsunamis happened, wasn't it? With the Indian Ocean?
You talking
Around
about Japan?
2012, or was that 2013? It was
I think
Indonesia.
I think that was 2011. Oh,
Indonesia.
Indonesia was
It was
20.
sometime in the early 2000s.
I think 2011 was the earthquakes in Japan.
Yeah, 2011
There
was
were
the
earthquakes
Fukushima.
that set off tsunamis
Yeah.
and it was so powerful that supposedly it caused the planet to wobble.
Yeah,
I've heard
remember
this.
hearing
I've
about
heard
that.
this.
Which put me into mind thinking, well, what long-term consequences are going to happen for that? And at the time, people were saying, yes, there's going to be consequences, but we won't know what they are yet. We're going to have to measure it. And since then, no one has talked about it in that respect at all. It just became a thing that nobody thought to study. And if someone is studying it, I would love to hear how that's affected things. It
If that's it,
ties into the idea that perhaps we're on the verge of a pole shift.
and they don't want to tell people.
Because if the planet has wobbled, it's going to wobble not just the planet, but the magnetic field,
Yeah.
the atmosphere, a lot of things. Even if we don't do a full spin, we're not going to end up on our side like Uranus. But see, I said it. I said it as if
that's how I say it too, because we'll all laugh.
But it has definitely affected something.
That's why there's a crack in Uranus
on the planet, and I feel like that contributes to some of this. I think perhaps while I'm not 100% sold on pole shift, I think it is a likely possibility, and it might be led to by something like that, because just anything that affects the magnetic field like that. And it was around the same time frame.
Yeah.
I don't want to tie it directly into the Hadron Collider, but a lot of things were going on at the same time. And the final, of course, part of this theory, whether or not the first two parts are correct, is that some people believe that we ended up in a hellish universe, a universe where only bad things happen. And that's why bad things are happening more often, because we've
Right.
pushed ourselves into a negative underworld space, which is, I think, stretching things personally, because the odds are the same that we could have been pushed into a positive sort of paradise kind of space, if you believe in that dichotomy, if you believe in the
That's true.
duality of these kind of things. If there's a negative, there's a positive. If there's a
Right.
positive, there's a negative. So I'm not sold on that. Also, again, because I'm not a super religious person, but I can understand why it would look like that, because we are in a time where there's a lot of rampant, awful things going on in the world. Um, so that is the theory of CERN ending the universe.
Mm.
And the end point of that is that while we're sitting around talking about it, that the ending of it just hasn't reached us yet, even though it's already happened.
Because of time dilation. When you go into the black hole, as you get closer to the middle of the black hole and you get closer to the center of the black hole, time slows down until it eventually stops. But once it stops, you won't know that it stopped because you'll be so slow that you won't even realize how slowly you're going. That's how the black hole works.
Is it?
Yep.
Or is that all theory? Because nobody's ever been inside of a black hole.
Nope.
So nobody knows. It's all just conjecture of it could be this or that. It could be something completely different. See, this is the thing that I think we need to understand better. Society propels gloom and doom because gloom and doom sells. Positivity doesn't sell. Spider talked about all those disaster movies. I mean, we've all seen them. The one with Nicolas Cage, the Knowing, where the volcano happens at Yellowstone. That kind of stuff sells, right? Depression sells. Um, I just think things happen, you know. Social media was a big reason why a lot of people are more vengeful now, because people can
Yep.
just get on there and say whatever they want to say. It's shifts in technology. If we can go back in the past and see shifts in technology, and people acted very similar to how they act these days. It's all cyclical. I don't think
One
that
one
there's
quick
something in that
correction.
regard. But go ahead.
One quick correction on my part. I didn't want to interrupt, but I
You're
also
good.
didn't want to forget that we had to put this in there. I looked up the date of the Indonesian tsunami, and that was actually in 2004. But it
Ah.
was within
Oh,
a similar time frame, so it kind of fits in my mind, but factually, I would not say it's
connected to
connected to
CERN.
the
Good.
connected to CERN in this way. So there was a
That's
tsunami in
good. I'm glad.
2004, another in 2018 that was not as bad, but the one in 2004 was the quote
The Earth wobbler.
deadliest natural disaster of the 21st century and one
That's
of the
wild.
deadliest in recorded history.
And you know what's
And
crazy
yeah,
is we felt none of that. Not a
yeah,
lick of it.
we just read about it on the news and saw it on the
That's
on
it.
TV. And
Yeah. I remember it and I don't remember it, if that makes
mm,
sense.
I made a point to try to remember it at the time because I was very deep into metaphysical things and I saw
Mm,
potential ritual action in a lot of things that may not have actually been connected at all. I was in that mind space
I
at
see
the
what you mean.
time.
Yeah, I get
So
it.
I kept it in my
I get
memory,
it.
and even though I'm not in that exact headspace anymore, I do remember it pretty vividly.
I think too, you know, human beings' brain loves to run rampant with what things could be, right? They might see something and say, "Oh my goodness, we're going to jump parallel dimensions." And I think the best place to always meet is in the middle. Am I a big fan of CERN? I don't know. I don't know. I feel like there's some things you got to be careful with, because you can cause a lot of damage
Like
in a
shipping
lot of different
antimatter in a
ways.
truck.
You know, just shoving it in a cooler to take with you down and do some fishing on the weekend. Yeah, You know what I mean? But once again, we've all seen the disaster movies, Jurassic Park, things like that, where that one thing happens and then everything goes to heck. But I think logically, it's a tough call with CERN because it's a very interesting, and I do understand how it works. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't think we've shifted. We've just become ruder to each other, really, is what it is.
It smashes the atoms into each other, and the way that we created the atomic bomb was by separating the atoms. So it's basically a reverse atomic bomb.
Oh, that's even better, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's even better.
repeatedly.
All the time.
Yep.
Dumpsters.
And
Clank,
just
clank,
dangerous
clank.
as an atomic bomb.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Steven, if Spider is done, please, it's your time.
All right.
Sir.
All right. So for us tonight, I've got one of my favorites, Project Looking Glass, which was a secret project that the government ran in conjunction with Project Stargate. Same project, just two different names during different time periods. But essentially what they did is they got people who were known to be psychics or had, certain mental powers, and they basically kidnapped them, brought them to the government facility, and put them in this machine that they used Sumerian cylinders that they found with Majestic 12. And they took the cylinders, put them into this machine, and this is all CIA documents. Like, these have been released by the CIA. And they put them into this machine that they called Project Looking Glass, and they had a person get into the machine, and they would pilot it by syncing their consciousness to the machine, and they would look into the future. And as they got more cylinders, they got more powerful, and over time, they were able to look not just anywhere on the Earth, but anywhere in time as well. And over time, they eventually got to the end, which was 2012. And it's kind of syncs up with the CERN stuff that Spider was talking about because, as they said, the particles are smashing together and everything, but they could never see past 2012. And then, we all know how that went. It was just a movie. It didn't actually happen. But then it turns out they had these other people. They were in contact with the gray aliens, which they call P-45s, and they were in contact with another type of alien called the P-52s. And the P-52s were 52,000 years into the future, present plus 52,000 years. And the P-52s were basically the ones that wanted to help us. And we had one who we called J-Rod. That was the species. Yeah, I know how it sounds. And that was the species of the alien.
I'm sorry.
And so, he basically helped us shut down the machine that was going to cause the black hole that was going to destroy the Earth in 2012. And that machine, coincidentally, according to conspiracy theorists, was CERN.
Thank you, J-Rod. Appreciate you, big dog. Yep. J-Rod.
But here's the problem. The P-45s, the present plus 45,000 years into the future aliens, those are the grays that we've heard so much about, with the big black eyes and the big skulls with their
they're really us. They're really us.
Yes, because once we go, because there are two timelines, and the one that they were trying to cause was going to cause a massive disaster that would basically allow the New World Order to form, and it would put us all into, well, I don't know if we're allowed to say that word on YouTube, so I'll just say under the control of the global elite, or whatever they call themselves these days, the New World Order. And it would put us all under their control, and they would basically tell us what to do, and we would have to, follow their orders just to survive, essentially. And that's why, supposedly, all the rich people are building the bunkers now, because they already know about this and they're preparing for this. Because even though it was supposed to happen in 2012, J-Rod helped to stop it, but that wasn't the end of it, because the P-45s are still around, and they're basically, according to the conspiracy theories, they say that the P-45s are either the Illuminati themselves, or they're in control of the Illuminati, and they're using that to control big political figures and everything else to try and lead people and make people hate each other and despise each other and go more violence and cause more wars around the world, to lead to an eventual global war that will have a nuclear bomb that will destroy 98% of life on the planet. And the few survivors are going to be the global elite that are building their bunkers right now. And anyone who's able to survive this, it's going to be like Fallout, and they're going to come back and they're going to take over and, put everyone under their control. And even though they failed in 2012 because they got the machine shut down, CERN, supposedly the Large Hadron Collider, was the machine that caused the black hole that destroyed everything. But now they're trying to lead us towards a nuclear war instead. And they got a bunch of pots going. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So they got a lot of plans. And that's only one of their plans. And another one of their plans is in 2030, when they upgrade the Large Hadron Collider, they're going to try that again in 2030. So we have another convergence point in 2030. And if we can go to timeline A, we can get the peace, love, unity, and we evolve into a greater species that is able to communicate telepathically. And over time, we learn to manipulate time and space with nothing more than our consciousness, which is actually supported by the electric universe theory and patterning. But that's a whole other thing. And, that's the timeline A. We all learn to love each other, and there's peace and harmony. All the secrets are revealed, and everyone knows the truth. They reveal the truth to everybody. But that's only one possible timeline. If we can, basically get the, let's call them evil people, out of, control of, everything, and the Illuminati, and get rid of them. But if we can't do that, and they keep leading us towards this war and all this violence and fighting and, division and making everyone hate each other, and they eventually lead us to a global war and a nuclear apocalypse. And then we basically, turn into the Greys. So that's my apocalypse story that I had for everyone tonight.
That's
A lot.
yeah. That's so this is what I think involving that, because I don't know, the Majestic 12 is an interesting aspect, but for me, because I'm getting to a point now, because I've read so much about aliens and alien technology, and every time I read about aliens, right, they're always this superior being. Always, they're always some wild superior being. So I think to myself, I say, okay, some of this is possible. I'm not saying aliens don't exist, but there's just something that tells me they're not Greys, they're not Nordics, they're not.
There's multiple races, is the
They're
main
us.
consensus.
They're
Yeah.
us. They're
Yeah.
us.
I agree.
Because once again, pole shifts, floods, things like that, technology happens.
And I think we've made it to other planets.
When you have the Dogon people who know about Sirius B and all that's going on up there,
The Black Knight
and
satellite.
then you have I don't know, the Black Knight satellite's interesting, but
It's been up there since the Aztecs, bro.
If I'm going to say what that is, it could be just space junk.
I don't know.
Well, like I said, I can't get to it. I can't go up to it. I can't jump in my jet.
My pet theory in terms of, I love simulation theory. Well, if you were running a simulation, you would have to have somewhere that you would store all the information for the simulation. Black Knight satellite. And they didn't have the technology to shoot a satellite into outer space back then during the Aztec and Mayan times.
But they did have the technology to create the Nazca lines.
And here's my thing, like you said, maybe it is space debris. Why don't we just send something up there and find out? We're going halfway around the world with Voyager to other galaxies, but we can't be bothered to send something up to find out what the Black Knight satellite is to settle this debate once and for all.
I mean, how far is it away from the Earth?
Unless
how far is it away from the Earth?
I'll look it up. But unless they've already sent something up to find it, and they didn't like what they found.
That's possible. I've always thought that about the moon landing. That something wasn't right. That you were playing with something you shouldn't be playing with. But I don't know. It's a tough thing to say.
203 light years.
So we can't reach that.
600 miles.
How much?
It says some sources claim it as being in a polar orbit with the perigee as low as 134 miles, while others suggest altitudes of 400 to 6 miles. But they are parts of unverified conspiracy theories, and no confirmed object has been officially recognized by space agencies. But, I don't trust space agencies.
Yeah, but at the same time, people that have telescopes, And I think this harkens back to what me and Spider have discussed about the moon landings. People have high powered telescopes now.
Yeah.
And so if that was the case, people would be able to see this thing.
Unless
And
it had
maybe they
cloaking
have.
technology.
Huh?
Unless it had cloaking technology.
Yeah, but this is something that's supposedly been sighted before and it wants to be seen. So I don't see it.
Unless it only wants
I
to be
don't see it
seen by certain
disappearing.
people
Maybe, but
that have
even
their brains
then,
tuned to a certain frequency.
I think
Because
there's
our
a
souls
place.
are frequencies.
I
Sorry,
think
I'll
there's a
stop.
place for that discussion. No, I think there's a place for that discussion. But I want to have a scientific discussion
Yeah.
about it. Like let's have that scientific discussion. So in order for that to happen, it would have to, get the brainwaves of people and manipulate. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that's not possible. But if it's been seen by people, you know what I mean, pictures, things like that, I don't think it's something that cares if you know it's there. That's what I think.
Yeah. I can agree with that.
The reason we don't talk about it is because it got wrote off as space junk, which it very well could be. We don't know what's out in space.
Yeah.
We don't know what has careened and came through and crashed and done its thing.
And of course, we always have the, counter argument that even what we consider to be space junk might just be, destroyed pieces from spaceships that we didn't understand.
That's a good point. I think it's a very, very well thought out point too, because that's also a thing. It could also be a new type of metal that we've yet to discover.
Yeah.
And it just cracked up off a planet and drove through.
Yeah.
Could we reach it with our technology we have today? And here's the second part of this. Would it be cost effective? That's the problem here. Because rocket fuel is not cheap.
But see, that's my argument though, is like, is anything we do in space cost effective
Wait. And I don't mean to steal your thunder on this.
You're good.
Here's the problem though. What if we investigate it and it's just a piece of giant space junk?
But isn't that the problem with everything we do in space? Every time we go to another planet, it could be a crap planet. Every time we send anything out, there could be 1,000,001 issues, and we lose that,
True.
expensive equipment, and it's just floating out there because we lost contact with it. Like,
But I
there's
think
a million problems.
I think a planet's a little bit different because you're dealing with a little bit different gravitational forces, like Mars, for instance, right? With the rover, you're dealing with a little bit different gravitational pulls and things like that. And so it was a little bit easier for the rover to kind of move around. And I don't disagree with you on wasting the money. I think my issue is I don't like sensationalizing it. Do you know what I mean? Because people take this kind of stuff and run with it, and they don't put any logic.
I have a solution for that. I have a
No.
solution for you.
We
If
could
we go
go.
up and figure it out,
We could go.
then we don't have to sensationalize it anymore.
But here's the problem too. We all would love to see what that really is. I would love to see what it really is. You, Spider, probably would love. He can't see us. We can't see him, I mean, but he probably would love to see it too. But the problem is, we live in a society now where you can't tell the tax-paying citizen that they're going to go look at space junk.
Yeah, they'd
You
rather
just
watch
can't.
football.
And it's it's not that. It's their money's being wasted enough. Now you're going to waste to go up there and look at space junk.
Yes,
I get it.
It's more interesting than football.
No, I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it isn't. I appreciate both things. But I think for me, it's, don't my taxes do enough? And so I think they're like, now we're just throwing money at the damn space junk up in the sky.
And
People
what do
aren't
we
gonna
do with
go
the
for it.
military?
People are going to go for it. What you would have to do is you'd have to have independent donors donate large chunks of money to sort of fund a project like that. And who says they haven't done that? Nobody can say for sure. But once again, with cameras everywhere and stuff, you would see a rocket taking off.
It would have to be something important to them. They would have to not be uncertain. They would have to have a certainty about what it is before they would spend that much money to send anything out, like you were saying a minute ago. They wouldn't spend that much money to send something out if they weren't certain.
Okay. Fair enough.
Like mining on the moon,
Oh, definitely that's possible. For sure.
Yeah.
So the last thing we're going to get into, if Steven is finished. Are you finished, young man?
I was done.
Excellent. So now I want to get into the end times prophecy. I'd say end times because I'm going to go off what the church believes and not what I believe. I want to make that plain as day. So what they believe is at some juncture, and Spider probably knows this, you probably know this, there's going to be an antichrist that is going to arise and take position. Middle East, they believe he's already around. They say this next pope is said to be him too. There's a lot of fringe theories on this.
Can I
And
add one
no,
thing?
please go ahead.
Okay. I also wanted to add that they also mention that a lot of believers will be deceived by the Antichrist as well.
Which yes, many come in my name that don't do what I do. Um, or many come in my name. But the issue is so then this being, because he's the devil incarnate, will in fact get murdered. When he is murdered, that's when the spirit of the adversary will enter his body to begin a long reign of terror and will throw man into what is known as the tribulation period with giant stinging locusts, things of that nature. All sorts of horrible things happen. If,
Times.
and you'll have to, if you are not raptured up, you are not raptured up and you are left here on the earth. It sounds ridiculous when I say it because this is not what this is about. But I'm putting my own bias into this. Let me put what they believe. Um, you'll be left behind to deal with said antichrist, minions of the adversary. You'll be forced to take a mark if you want to eat, shop, do whatever you want to do. Right? If you don't, your family starves, you starve, and after a while, they'll just start killing you. They'll behead you. Suppose there'll be a time that you won't be able to die. There will be a mass earthquake, mountains lowered, all of it, right? So I want to we can break this down. First of all, and this is what I find to be to me this is what it is, but the idea of that one world beloved leader, the Antichrist, right? I'm gonna start with Spider because Spider's been in the church a little bit. He knows he probably knows what I'm talking about. I'm not gonna. We already know he probably knows. So, what do you think? What do you think about this Antichrist, this one world leader? What did you think about it then when you first heard it, and what do you think of it now?
Um, at the time, it's hard for me to describe how I felt about a lot of biblical stories because I believed them on a surface level as a child, like, oh yeah, this happened in the past, obviously. It
Right.
was a lot more difficult for me to believe that, oh, these things are going to happen
Okay.
because I was very much a child in the moment. As I got into a teenager and I got to be exceptionally broody and angsty and that kind of thing, I always worried about the future, but it wasn't the future in big terms like that. It was the future of, what if this person says they don't like me? What if I go to school and this bad thing happens? What if I drop my books and whatever? I didn't have the foresight at the time. And so by the time I really gave it any serious thought, I was already an adult and I was moving away from that kind of stuff. And it comes off very much as allegory to me of less a person and more an organization or
A
a
symbol.
group of individuals. And I was influenced by various occult writings at the time as well. And they always said things that were symbolic about the person that the Antichrist was going to be. They said he was going to be slightly deaf in his right ear because right is the side of good and left is the side of evil because left-handed
I've
people
never
are
heard this,
evil and
but this is
right-handed.
interesting.
Which is what led to things like left-hand path, right-hand path philosophy,
Right.
right? So they said he was going to be slightly deaf in his right ear so that he could not hear the words of God because he was supposed to be evil and is actively avoiding listening to it. One of his arm, like his right arm or his right leg, was going to be slightly shorter or longer than the other, something like that. Not noticeable in a weird, like make him look like a hunchback or hunched over or twisted, but it was something that was definitely stood out as unnatural. And so there would be ways to tell that this was the guy, this was the person. He'd be very charismatic. He would be able to give speeches that would convince people of almost everything. And the issue there is that a lot of people in recent memory can do that.
Yes.
Of
Sure.
course, in the 30s and 40s, we had a certain Mr. Adolf. I don't want to say his last name to get us booted off of YouTube, but everybody knows who I'm talking about. He was very charismatic to his followers.
Yeah.
Certain of the communist leaders around
Austrian
the time
dictator.
and slightly ever afterwards were very charismatic. In modern history, during during Bill Clinton's time, he was very charismatic. He played the saxophone on Saturday Night Live, right? Or on Arsenio Hall, whatever it
I
was.
heard about that.
Um, Barack Obama gives great speeches, excellent speeches, very good speeches. I don't believe most of them, but he gives good speeches. Um, some people say that Mr. Trump gives good speeches. I'm not a big fan of his speeches.
I think
I
they're
don't want
fun.
people to I don't want people to turn that into something like I'm trying to badmouth anything or stand for anything politically. I just said something about one guy. Now I'm saying something about the other guy. Okay? So let's just keep it at that. But the Antichrist is supposed to be exceedingly charismatic and convincing, and that's how you follow him. You don't follow him initially under threat of violence. You follow him because he's saying the right things, because
For
he's there to
will.
help.
For
I'm from
will.
the government and I'm here to help,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
And
And
we know
so
Spider's not. We know Spider's not, so that's
no. Um
good.
and then of course the great beast and things like that are all
Mhm.
supposed to be not actual
Beasts.
creatures or beings,
Right.
but they're supposed to be an apparatus of some kind, a government office perhaps that registers you, and if you're not registered correctly, then it quietly shuffles you off and you're never seen again, things of that nature. Um and it's just there's a lot of ways you can take it, and it all boils down to what you started with, and that it was the
Yes.
revelation was written for the time, and the time was the Roman occupation
Yep.
and various other things going on, and a lot of the symbolism can be directly tied to Roman imagery, like this person's possibly the Roman emperor at the time, this person's that. um and I don't want to say that word because we'll get booted off of YouTube, but the companion of Babylon, which makes it
Yeah.
sound kind of like slightly different, the
Yeah.
Lady of the Night of
The
Babylon,
good friend.
Yeah.
The good
isn't
friend.
supposed to be a person, but it's supposed to be that the government of a different country is there to sell out your country in favor of the leading empire, which is the Roman Empire, because they came
Yep.
in, they basically bought up all these territories. We'll leave a garrison here. We'll keep the peace until the barbarians started coming out and tearing the whole thing from
Yep.
the outside in. So you have to look at it from a lot of lenses. Do I think that they're lenses, not lenses?
Thank you.
Lenses. There's no
Wait,
G
wait,
in lenses,
wait,
by
wait,
the way.
wait, real quick. How do you say periodically?
Periodically. Periodically. Like a
It's
peer, periodicals.
He said periodically. I was like,
Like
I was like,
periodicals.
Pairs.
did he just say periodically?
Um
I swear we know what we're talking about. We all know what
But-
we're talking about. Okay, you can go look at the stuff. We goof off a lot, but you can go back and check what we're talking about, and it will come back legit.
Do your research.
but the
Yes.
bottom line of it is I don't think necessarily that there's going to be one person that's going to be, yes, this person is definitively, this is
Right.
the Antichrist. I think if something like that is prophesied does come to pass, I think it's going to be an organization that's going to have an immense amount of governmental power.
Right.
I think we're on track to having a one world government anyway, but I don't
agree.
mean that in a way that it's necessarily going to be bad. I think it's going to be something necessary as long as it preserves the sovereignty of the individual members of of various countries. But it's going to get there. And it could go the way of an antichrist organization if you let it, or it could go another way, and it could benefit all of us, and it could get us into space and things. So I don't automatically
Stop.
assume that that's going to be the Antichrist, that it's going to be the one world government is automatically the end of the world. So again, a lot of ways you can look at it. That's how I see it, but it all remains to be seen.
I'm sorry, the way he ended that sounded like the end of a song. See, we can't see his face, so I don't know what he's doing, and it's bothering me.
I'm
Because,
mostly drinking.
We know that, but you mean you mostly did that during the stream anyway, so it
Yeah,
doesn't
I
really
mean,
matter.
it's not that different. It's not that different.
Steven, same question before we get out of here. What do you think? What do you think the Antichrist is?
So, not getting political, not gonna
You're
mention
fine.
any
No,
names,
no,
but
you're good.
I have my own ideas on that. But I would like to actually mention that I really like the way that Spider was talking about the symbolism of everything, and I actually do agree with him on the New World Order thing. And I wanted to say, I think that's what people are talking about when I talk about the timeline A, timeline B. That's what people are saying. It's symbolic. If the New World Order that Spider is talking about actually does happen, it could go either way, depending on who they put in charge of it, what kind of people are in there, and, a bunch of decisions like that. There are a lot of variables, but it could go either way. It could be great or it could be terrible, depending on who's in charge of it and what kind of people there are. And as for the Antichrist, I believe that is, like Spider said, I think it's going to be a symbolic thing, but I do think it's going to be an individual person rather than an organization. That's where I do differ. But overall, after everything that I've studied between science and religion, at the end of the day, I've come to the conclusion that I believe the Bible and all religious texts are alchemical. They need to be viewed as symbolic. Parts of it are symbolic, some parts of it are real, and it's up to the individual to decide which parts they think are real and which parts they believe are symbolic. But I think it's important for everyone to believe that at least part of it is real and at least part of it is symbolic, however you choose to do that for yourself at the end of the day. And I think that's an important way to look at things.
Excellent points. Excellent points. I do like the eschatological context in which people discuss, because I think it breaks down certain things. Like I said at the beginning of our episode here, when it comes to the Old Testament apocalyptic verses, whether canon, non-canon, or whether current or proto, what I've noticed is that it's all basic foreshadowing of these empires will rise and this will happen because they've seen what happens before. So they're in a way they're predicting in the future, but at the same time, I think they're just really foreshadowing
Like
what
you said,
they've
it's
seen,
cyclical.
what these empires have done, and what's been done to their forefathers, and then moving along.
They're writing
I
their
think
story.
it sits as that, but then when I think you get into the future aspect, I wouldn't be surprised if our ancestors could logically piece together some things. Like, say, for instance, the Baghdad battery, right? Somebody had to have that knowledge in their head, right, to make that. But then what other knowledge did they have besides that? That
That could
was
be a whole
limited
episode.
by their technological prowess, right? They didn't have the available items to make that happen. And I think that you could play that into the alchemical aspect of the Philosopher's Stone.
We could do a whole episode on that one day.
We could just drink mercury and do an episode one day. I'm not going to, but we could. That's enough. We're done. We're goofing. We're new boo goofing. We are out of here. This is the end of the season. We're gonna end prematurely, kind of, because we had some hiccups this year or this season. People couldn't be where they were gonna be.
You can't even see me anymore.
You can't even see him, and we miss him. Which I didn't think I would say, but here we are. Didn't think I would say that, but this is where we're at with life. So we will be back. When are we returning to the stage for these fine folks?
September 5th, Saturday, September 5th.
Wow, that
a
is
good
some
long time.
It's a long time, isn't it? That's a long
Good
time.
long time.
But we'll be bringing you little tidbits and cool things and such. So And Steven will still be being odd.
Yep.
So he'll still be doing the oddities. Then you might even see me or Spider drop something in between time. So keep forward to that. And until September 5th, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see all of you beautiful, amazing folks. What day is that? That's a Saturday. That's a
Yeah.
Saturday.
I'm doing the prayer hands like I always do. You just can't see it,
You can't say it. You can't say it.
but I am doing it.
Anyways, love you guys. Thanks for watching. Another season in the books. See you next season.